Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to attend yet another keynote session in IICCIE22 conference, International Interdisciplinary Conference on Creativity, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. I'm the moderator for this session, Zhao, at University of Waterloo. I'm so pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Farshid Shams, at York University, Canada, to talk about organization and the social construction of technology. Before we get started, a housekeeping item, because we're streaming in 3 platforms, please, in order to help us sort out your questions, please send your questions for the Q&A period to this email at the bottom of the screen. That is info@theori.com, info@the-THIIORI.com, info@THIIORI.com. Let me introduce Dr. Shams, the keynote speaker for this session. Dr. Farshid Shams is a tenured associate professor of strategy and organization studies at York University, Canada. He received his PhD in management from the University of Bath, UK. Dr. Shams' current research centers on contemporary professional work, processes of organizing, and matters of identity in and around organizations. He investigates these topics primarily in professional knowledge-intensive service settings, such as universities and social work organizations, and he strives to understand how professionals' everyday practices lend support to the long-term stability of their organizations or lead to the initiation of a process of change from inside. Drawing on a wide range of theoretical concepts, such as practice-driven institutionalism, identity work, and sense-making in his studies, Dr. Shams' work corresponds to 2 broad streams of social symbolic work in pluralistic settings and strategic management. Dr. Shams' publications have appeared in prestigious journals such as Public Administration, Studies in Higher Education, and Education Studies. Dr. Shams, welcome again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Will. I'm trying to share my screen. It is not allowing me. Okay, still unable to share my screen. There we go. Okay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much to the organizers of this seminar for providing this opportunity for me to talk on this very important topic. Often when it comes to technology discussions, less is being addressed in relation to the social construction of technology. Focuses mainly on the material aspect of technology and on the way that it's being used. So I thought that this would be helpful to bring up this very timely and important discussion. So just a quick overview of this presentation. I'm going to start with discussing the early studies of the social construction of technology to take a stock of what we know. Obviously, while taking a sociological take on the advancement and development of technology, my interest resides with the organizational implications of that. So I'm going to try to link that to organization theory and look at this phenomenon from that perspective. After covering or briefly reviewing the studies, or better to say, the major assumptions that have been held by earlier scholars, I'm going to talk about the shift towards understanding the role of actors in constructing and adapting or making changes to the development of technologies, and the way that this process has been encapsulated and studied by academic scholars. The foci is the importance of human agency, and I'm going to elaborate on that, and that is important in terms of defining some key terminologies that helps me to conclude. Talking about some key terminologies, one of the most important ones is technological frames, which we need to understand the boundaries of technology and what we are talking about. And then I'll talk about the inner technological logic versus technology work, which is a key dichotomy in this discussion. After that, I'll try to categorize different sets of studies into major theoretical categories of socio-technical systems, structuration theory, and socio-materiality. And then that takes me to the final stage of my presentation that includes uncertainties about new technologies such as AI that we discussed yesterday in the panel. In that, I'll try to revisit agency structure debate from a processual perspective, and then I'll end my presentation by talking about the role that we as people can play in shaping the future of technology, particularly in organizations. So the key questions I'm trying to address through these presentations are twofold. First is, what do we know and where we are going, or what we need to know? And the other is that, are we using technology to organize work, or it determines how work should be organized? So control is the concept that I'm trying to put my finger on and elaborate. So starting with the traditional views of the technology, early studies mainly focus on the role of inventors and great ideas that were developed and suggested by these gifted, talented people like Thomas Edison. Discussions were mainly revolving around the role that these individuals played in introducing these technologies, and these set of studies basically magnified the heroic role of investors who discovered these great ideas. So that one of the major characteristics of these studies is that they focus on, they try to portray the inventors as heroes who discover certain technologies and introduce it to the societies, and then people start using them. In that way of shaping the picture and the way that we understand this phenomenon, users were mainly portrayed as passive recipients of technology with minimal intervention with its discovery and the development and adoption. The focus was on the technological artifact, neglecting the social context. And by artifact, these studies mainly refer to the material aspect of technological devices that were identified or developed and introduced to societies. And the assumption had been held was that technologies are something that are always existing out there waiting to be discovered. The development of technology, accordingly, was understood as an objective reality with a sense of inevitability in the absence of human experience except for the inventors, meaning that they were suggesting that these technologies would be discovered sooner or later by somebody, and and the people and the society and the social context surrounding that technology played a minimal role in that. The study conducted by Pinch and Biker in 1984 was a tipping point in understanding the social context of technology. This study and a few other studies, mainly by Biker and colleagues, but a few other scholars as well, around the same time, highlighted the role of the social context in which technology is born and further developed. They take the example of bicycle and the life cycle of bicycle from penny farthing bicycles that were very primitive form of bicycles that were invented in the 19th, if I'm not wrong, and then it was further developed through to the device that we know as bicycle today, which is called chain-driven rubber-tired bicycles. Now, as you can see in these pictures, there are significant changes that did not occur overnight. It was a process, and this study draws our attention to the role of other social actors in this process. So from the embryonic stage all the way to the maturity stage of the bicycle, many actors and stakeholders played roles. At the beginning, obviously, the penny farthing bicycles were criticized heavily by people. Although they were excited about that, they raised several different criticisms about safety, about its stability, ease of use, and even the appearance. Some people criticized that by saying it was ugly. They didn't like how it looked. These are all social factors. Obviously, in those days, they didn't have internet or social media to put comments on products the way that we do, not even at the time of that this article was written. But they were communicating, they were writing articles in newspapers and talking about that. And the developers and the designers were using these as feedbacks to make changes to this device. So they changed the design many times to address some of these issues that were raised by the users. But also, what is very important is that some of these problems were never addressed. And we, as the users of this device, came to accept that these are not really problems. For example, the rubber tire bicycles will get punctures, they need patches, they need inflations, and they need to be inflated, but that's not seen as a major problem nowadays. So we accepted to ignore some of those problems and accept, the shape of the bicycle the way it is. The development of the bicycle was not a linear genealogy of incremental improvements, therefore. Rather, it was an explosion of differing and often contradictory ideas that bubbled up from the society of users of this device. In the end, the modern bicycle didn't necessarily win out because it was objectively better, but simply because many relevant social groups came to accept it. In fact, there were several other types of bicycles introduced by the designers, but this was the one that was publicly accepted despite its shortcomings. And that is the key point. What it says that technology is not always developed according to some inner technological logic, but itself is a social product. The nature and direction of technological change is not predetermined simply by the material reality of the technology. Instead, it is shaped by the social world of which it is a part. And this is a very key point, suggesting that actors play a key role in developing technology in the way that it is aligned with their interests. So the direction of technological developments is the result of complex interactions between the social context and the material component of the technology. So from a sociological perspective, that a study like Pinch and Barker offered, the more recent views of technology subverted the deterministic view of technology, shedding light on the role that social actors play in its development and adoption. And the focusment on how a network of actors engage in shaping objects that are inherently flexible in their meaning, use, and material constructs. In other words, actors, as we understand based on these studies, exercise their agencies in developing and adopting technologies. They are not passive recipients of technologies as it was portrayed in the earlier studies. The social studies of technology in general have two major foundations. One of those is that the technology is not developed according to some inner technical logic, but is itself a social product, as I mentioned. And the other one is that there are uncertainties associated with the future of technology, such as the discussions that we have about artificial intelligence nowadays. So, in order to better understand how the social actors can interfere with the development of technology and impact it, we need to look at the definition of technological frame. Technological frame is a concept that includes understanding of what the technology is for, who will use it, for what purpose. And that signifies the role of different stakeholders who are going to be engaged with the technology, not just the material aspect of the technology. Now that brings us to the next important definition, and that's the concept of technology work, which is about the purposeful reflexive contribution of actors to the development, change, and or maintain these frames. In other words, technology is being considered as a social symbolic object that is being developed and maintained by a network of active social actors. And they can play a role in shaping it. Now, the way that these two are interrelated is that by understanding that the actors can exercise their agencies, we can understand how they can tamper with this technological frame, with the way that it is perceived and understood, or even with its materiality. So, put it differently, the role of social actors is to either change or maintain this technological frame. It is important to note that technology work is a process, is an ongoing process. Actors make effort in developing technological artifacts, but also in the usage and the application of them in the work context. I'll put different examples here, but there are many. Zoom, which is a platform on which we are holding this seminar, is one of those. It was invented before the COVID time, but during the COVID time, many people were forced, and it was a kind of blessing in disguise to use this platform. it did not look like what it is today. It did not have many of the features that we are using today. It was more or less in a kind of very primitive shape with few options at the beginning. But once people started using that, they started making fuss about the lack of some of the features, or ascribing positive connotation to some other functions that was facilitated by this platform, and that gave idea to the developers of this tool to further develop it. Instagram is another a good example of picture of the the icon of the first icon of Instagram, and now how it looks like. But if you're a user of that application, you know that there've been significant changes through the life cycle of this product. What is noteworthy is that people started using it in a different context and different ways. Initially, it was introduced as a tool to share pictures, but people started taking screenshots of some of the texts that they write and put it there, sharing it, giving the idea that people like to share some textual material as well. And they started taking snapshots of some of the videos that they had recorded on the phones, posting it on Instagram. And that gave the idea to the developers that they should include some tools to share some types of videos as well. Now, SharePoint is something that some of the audiences may not be familiar with. SharePoint is a product developed by Microsoft that enables to integrate different packages of Microsoft Office, but also for document sharing and developing certain workflows in organizations, workflows for the documents and other jobs that need to be done within an organization. When you purchase SharePoint, it is pretty raw. It comes with several different modules, but it's not a plug and play. You need to further develop that and customize it for your organization to be able to use that. Now, this is slightly different from the two other products. While people have contributed to the development of this product initially, but when they adopt it, they can shape it in the way that they want for the organization and use it. And that empowers the managers against the users. Think about the user who's using this platform, which introduces several different stages of a process. When they look at their screen, there are a couple of or few options that they can take. It doesn't give them too much of option. Those options have been taken away from them beforehand by the design of the software. So software can play a dual role. It can enable and restrict. But in all of those, different groups of people are playing active roles. Now I'd like to talk about the different theoretical schools of thought that have been developed according to these studies. Socio-technical approach is the first one that is originated in the studies of work systems that were mainly focused with the job design. Also took into account the social aspect of it. They looked at the interactions between man and machine. If you review the literature on industrial engineering, you see a lot of that, especially after the Second World War, that the industrialization prevailed across all different countries around the world. They were very much concerned with how man and machine could work in harmony. The problem or the criticism against this approach is that it considered men as an extension of a machine, a component of the system that has not yet been automated. So the assumption is that sooner or later it would be automated, and men would be redundant. The other approach, which serves as the dominant approach in this set of studies, is the structuration theory, which is based on the interpretive perspective offered by scholars in the 90s or late 80s, largely relying on Anthony Giddens' structuration theory that emphasizes on the dialectic between agency and structure. Now, this gave a very more important role to the actors. Stephen Barley's work in 1986 is a seminal work that observed introduction of CT scanners to two different departments in hospitals, and he concludes that he observes basically that one of these departments becomes far more decentralized than the other as a consequence of adopting this technology. While the technology is the same and the work of these two organizations are the same, the way that the adoption of technology makes on the structure of the organization are significantly different. And the point he makes is that the social context in which the technology is adopted and the history of the departments are very, very important. So people can exercise agency in the way that they adopt technology. But what he suggests is that introduction of the technology is an episode or an occasion in which people get a chance to exercise their agencies. This understanding helps us to understand how and when people adopt or use a technology. Finally, we've got a more recent view that is called socio-materiality. That shifts from focusing on how technologies influence humans to examine how materiality is intrinsic to everyday activities and relations. So from a relational ontological perspective, it looks at the everyday interaction of people with technology. Technology does not provide occasions for adoption, adaptation, and implementation, but there is a consensus relationship continuous relationship between the social and the material in everyday life. And this viewpoint shifts from focusing on the relationships between entities like human technology, as it was the case in socio-technical approach, to understanding the complex interrelationship between the assemblage of disparate networks of actors and materials. So finally, talking about the uncertainty. These theoretical advances led to the shift from the image of technologies as tools to technologies as fields of practice, in which different groups of people as individuals or collective bodies are interacting with each other and trying to impact the way that the technology is developed or adopted. The ongoing negotiated nature of the boundaries between technology and humanity addressed by the socio-material perspective offers both opportunities and existential threats, like the discussions that we have about the usage of artificial intelligence and the way it's going to further develop. So what really matters is control. Are we going to have control over this technology, or we are going to be controlled by technology? Now, from this theoretical advancement, we know that we can play a role. What can we do? So the existential threats can be addressed by technology work, the concept that we discussed, through envisioning technology as a social symbolic object. Now, if we understand that we are the ones who are determining the future of the technology, at least to a large extent, and there is no inner logic within the technology that determines its future developments, we can come to the understanding that we should play an active role. In order to do so, we have to address a set of questions, such as those that I've outlined here. which individuals and collective bodies are the most influential actors, which discourses can be developed and promoted to forestall the adverse outcomes of AI or any other technology, which existing technologies can be utilized to mobilize an effective movement to consider the future of technologies, and how can we actively direct AI and its applications toward delivering a desired outcome. So bottom line, to recapitulate, the conclusion is that both individuals and collective actors can enact their agencies towards shaping technology frame for future, and that's the first step in addressing the uncertainties in the future of the technology. I've come to the end of my presentation, and I guess it's time to take some questions from the audience if there is any.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shams, for such an interesting and informative talk. I personally learned a lot. I really enjoyed your talk on the different perspectives that we can use in research. From the audience, we have a few questions, many of which also touch upon the theoretical perspectives. So I'll just read them out to you in the order of the questions being received. So the first question is actually on social material perspective. So can you speak a bit more to that perspective, especially in light of artificial intelligence?
Absolutely, yes. So the social material perspective suggests everyday interaction with the technology, and the way that this ongoing process is being shaped. It is a work in making. And AI is a very good example, because artificial intelligence, to the best of my knowledge, is something that learns from our behavior and the way that we interact with these softwares. So the way that we interact with that, the way that we use it, it automatically impacts the way it's going to develop further. It is not just me, writing a review on the AI, but it's about the way that I put it into use. For example, these artificial intelligence is being used in many of the applications that we have on our cell phones, including the map. The map I have tracks my journeys, and then that kind of behavior. Now, when I activate that and when I don't activate that, when I use it or not use it, provides kind of data for the application to be processed. Now, I can enact my agency in terms of using it in a smarter way. And nowadays, some of these applications are allowing us to opt out of being tracked by the application or not. We can play a more active role in doing so, and that provides a certain data that can be analyzed by AI, but also we can promote certain discourses, and that's how we can play a more active role in shaping the future of AI.
That's a great answer. Thank you so much. The second question reads like this: technology work as purposeful, reflective contribution of actors seems to be a very interesting idea. Can you elaborate on that with an example? And there's a follow-up. So what about technicians that do not contribute reflectively to the development of a technology? Are they also technology workers?
That's a very, very good question, especially the second one. No, the technology work, yes, it is a purposeful, reflective contribution, in a sense that we, as the users of the technology, can actively contribute to its development. For example, the example I said for Zoom, now we started, providing feedback. And that's an active role that we are playing, the way that we are using it. or the way that we adopted. Actually, we adopted in different ways. Some of the technology were not developed to be used in the way that they are being used now, but people found different usages for them. So that is a kind of active engagement with shaping the future development of the technology or its direction. But yes, there are some passive users of technology. They are definitely technology workers, but not in the sense that we define technology work. So technology work talks about actors who are reflexively and purposefully try to either maintain a technology or its usage or its meaning, or try to change it. The passive workers, if by the word technology workers you are referring to the concept of technology work, no, those passive users are not really considered as technology entrepreneurs, or those who are trying to maintain or change the technological frame. Having said that, there is another stream of research that investigates relations of power, and within that we see that some actors are acting autonomously, or some others are wrapped in frames of power, and they've been rendered docile to this, this power structure, and they can make very minimal impact on that.
That's a great answer. Thank you. I mean, before I read the third question, I also have a follow-up comment / question. I think the definition of technological work as purposive, reflective action makes a lot of sense. But then at the same time, I see a parallel between this definition of technology work and institutional work. Here, the fact that you mentioned technological entrepreneur is very inspiring. That definitely carves out the agency element of this definition. But at the same time, I'm also a little bit worried about, if we focus too much or highlight too much on the agency aspect, then we might unintentionally downplay the distributed nature of really work, right? There are people that are actually, in a way, they are not so reflective. They don't even, they don't really reflect upon what they're really doing, but they contribute.
Yes.
To institutional change. I think for technological work, which is really a new term, maybe we should leave that door open as well. That people that are not that reflective, right? They're not that.
That's very true. And allow me to add something to that. That points out the inequalities between different actors. We have very powerful actors and we have less powerful actors. Me as an individual user of technology may not have too much of power to influence the direction of that, whereas large companies take a larger stake in that. So we have to take that into account as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. So it's distributed, and also there's a hierarchy, different positions in the power relationship. It's interesting. I mean that actually made me think about another thing, but we don't have time to develop it. It's customers. What's the role for customers in technology work, right? If technology that is not that, in terms of technicality, not that advanced, but that Wings has already successfully won the hearts of millions. Maybe technology users contribute to a certain institute, certain, in a way, to technology work. But it's thanks for the.
Well, it has become much easier nowadays, thanks to the technology that we have. Compared to the study of bicycle in those days. How could people comment on the shape of the bicycle, or make their voice? But nowadays we can go on the websites, write reviews, on products. So customers can play a very active role in that. In a much easier way.
Yeah, it's great. So basically today, what is really happening here is those actors that traditionally would be trivialized, would be placed in the peripheral. Now they are empowered, right? I think that's what you're trying to get at. That's great. Thank you. Final question here from the audience. What do you think can be done in the short term to make sure AI will be a good force?
That is a good question, but it's very difficult to answer. I don't think that we can do anything in short term to achieve a large goal as such. In the short run, what we can start doing and keep our fingers crossed that it is going to be fruitful and impactful is that we start creating awareness about the power of society and the social actors, including individuals and the collective groups, and also the power of discourse that can be created by people. They should not be necessarily the users of technology. It can be a journalist, it can be somebody who's observing the usage of a technology in a specific context to review that and talk about that. And it can be picked up by millions of people, like, you know, if you can efficiently use some of these social media like Twitter, Facebook, and other devices to reach out to the broader audience and create powerful discourses. Like the example I said, you know, nowadays some of these applications are giving you the option not to be tracked by them. That was not in the interest of the companies to do it in the first place. They obviously want to track us, to collect large data and then analyze the data to understand our behavior and tailor the products, you know, to our needs or you know, to their own interests. The reason that they developed that was that, you know, powerful bodies, you know, within the society, not necessarily the users, but that includes the users of that technology, started complaining about that and then making fuss about that. I doubt if there are very strict regulations about that. It is about the power of discourse that is being promoted in these societies to put pressure on these companies to act ethically and provide that kind of option for the users. But I think that we have a long way to go. And short-termism, it can be dangerous itself. If you think that we can resolve a problem in the short run, I think that we'll be making a big mistake. We should start doing something, but we have to be patient at the same time.
That's a great answer and a great comment, I think, to conclude this session. So discursive, in a way, discursive construction of technology, right?
It is the material. Well, ultimately, it affects the materiality as well. Like the way that the shape of the bicycle changed, we can change the shape of AI or any other technology, or the way that are adopted or contextualized in certain industries or organizations. So it is not just about the meaning that are ascribed to them, but also about the material forms of these technological devices as well.
Okay, fantastic. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Shams, for this insightful talk. And I also want to thank everyone for tuning in. We have another session coming up in about 15 minutes. Let's have a break. Thank you, Dr. Shams. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for tuning in for yet another keynote session in IICCIE22 International Interdisciplinary Conference on Creativity, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. In this session, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Huiting with us talking about adopting AI in public administration, tensions and responses. Before we get started, one quick housekeeping item, because we're streaming on 3 platforms. In order to help us coordinating the Q&A, please send your questions for the Q&A period for Dr. Chi to the email address at the bottom of your screen. That is info@theiori.com, info@theiori.com, info@theiori.com. Let me begin by introducing Dr. Huiting, the keynote speaker for this session. Dr. Chi is assistant professor in the Department of Political Science at Valdosta State University. Dr. Chi received her doctoral degree in the School of Public Affairs at Penn State University. Her research interests include public and nonprofit management, collaborative governance, and organizational behavior and theory. Her research has been published in prestigious journals, such as American Review of Public Administration and Society, and Journal of Chinese Governance. Thank you very much, Dr. Chi, for giving us this talk, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing me. Can I share the screen?
Yeah, you should be able to do that.
But it should host disabled participants screen sharing.
Okay, just one sec.
Thank you.
Can you double check whether it works?
Oh, it works. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, very well. Go ahead.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for attending the session today, and thank you to Zhao for moderating the session. I am appreciated to the opportunity to talk about the adoption of AI in public administration. AI is an area of research and technology application that can have profound impact on public administration in many ways. It offers both benefits and challenges to the public sector. AI for public administration is still a new field facing a set of tensions. In this talk, I will analyze underlying tensions inherent in the adoption of AI in public administration and discuss some possible responses to them. Here is the overview of today's presentation. Firstly, I would like to introduce some backgrounds of AI application in public administration, which might be a little bit different from its use in the private sector. Then I'm going to discuss some tensions behind the use of AI in public administration and some possible responses to these tensions. Lastly, I can answer some questions you have, and you can also share your comments on this topic. AI is one of the most popular technology trends nowadays. It is a kind of computational intelligence showed by machines that has a capacity to learn, to rationalize and process certain instructions to be followed or to perform an action. It includes software and hardware-based technologies. The software-based techniques include such as artificial neural networks, multi-agent systems, natural language, automatic learning, deep learning, data mining, etc. Hardware-based techniques include such as robotics, autonomous vehicles, artificial vision, virtual reality, etc. Although AI is more widely used in the private sector and global market, it is also not a new thing in the public sector. The use of AI in government could be tracked back to the World War II when Alan Turing deciphered the Enigma machine to intercept Nazi communications. Nowadays, the expanding use of AI in public administration is triggering a lot of opportunities for governments at different levels worldwide. Governments in many countries, such as China, United States, UK, and Mexico, are providing increasing attention to the potential of AI and have already implemented some AI techniques in different areas. The potential of AI in the public administration are primarily found in the following three areas, including improving the efficiency and effectiveness of internal operations in governments at different levels, improving policymaking and public service for the citizens, and also improving citizen-government interaction. Here is a detailed summary of categories of AI application in the federal administrative agencies in the United States. For example, from this table, we can see that in the area of enforcement, AI is used in customs and border protection and transportation security, such as the use of facial recognition systems. In the area of public service and engagement, AI is used in the Department of Housing and Urban Development and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service chatbots. In addition to the area of public service, AI is also used for government's internal management. For example, AI is used in the Department of Health and Human Services as a tool to assist procurement decision-making. Traditional forms of service provision, policymaking, and enforcement can change rapidly with the introduction of AI technologies in government practices and public sector ecosystems. AI offers both challenges and benefits to public administration. When adopting AI in public administration, it is very significant for us and for both scholars and practitioners to examine tensions existing in the multi-faceted nature of AI and public administration. Next, I will analyze some underlying tensions inherent in the adoption of AI in public administration. The first tension is between rationality and human qualities. As we know, an AI models the human decision-making process, or even more so, outperform humans in terms of rationality and accuracy in decision-making. AI's ability to think rationally contributes to achieve high performance rational actions that sometimes humans are unable to achieve. This kind of rationality is an instrumental approach to problem solving, which stands in contrast to value-based reasoning, often, right? And the instrumental rationality prioritizes the codifiable aspects of organizational activities, particularly where there are clean, quantifiably measurable goals. So this is the feature of AI in decision-making. However, value-oriented rationality is of great importance in public administration, since human decisions and actions, especially in areas such as management, politics, and laws, have to consider human qualities. This include empathy, humanity, and conscientiousness, which play a decisive role and have a conclusive influence on the outcome of decision-making and its subsequent evaluation. For example, during the personal interactions with government officials, citizens often value human responsiveness, which is a very important public value that can convey empathy and promote trust from the citizens to the government. while the digital rigidity and zero-touch logic may not allow for sufficient flexibility and customization. So this question arises as to whether AI, which often lacks the human qualities, is ethically and morally legitimate to take over government actions and human decisions. I can give you an example. We can see that the tension between rationality and human qualities in the adoption of AI will significantly influence the practice of public administration. Here is the example. For example, in the state of Indiana in the United States, automated decision systems, ADS, were adopted in determining welfare eligibility, which can de-emphasize face-to-face contact with caseworkers in favor of automatic electronic systems. On the one hand, citizens prefer the automated decision systems because the use of AI in these systems can decrease the exercise of arbitrary power and bias by bureaucrats, right? But on the other hand, the using of AI also contributes to a 437 million lawsuit in 2010, since citizens have been rightly concerned that government services were applied rigidly and insensitively. This is about the first tension, rationality versus human qualities in the use of AI in public administration. The second tension exists between paternalism and liberalism in public administration. As we know, AI is already anchored in our everyday life, right? From search engines to recommendation platforms. In this context, AI registers and examines the user's data input, location, and preference, and returns a range of information or recommendations accordingly. Right? Today, algorithms know pretty well what we do, what we think, and how we feel, possibly even better than our friends and family or even ourselves. In fact, we are being remotely controlled ever more successfully in this manner. The trend can go from programming computers to programming people, especially when AI technologies are becoming increasingly popular in the world of public administration and politics. In the form of nudging and massive scale, governments are trying to steer citizens towards certain behaviors. And this form of nudge is a modern form of paternalism. And AI-supported, this is AI-supported paternalism. This appears to be a sort of digital scepter that allows one to govern the masses efficiently without having to involve citizens in a democratic process. Citizens could be governed by a data-empowered wise king, and AI will in future provide an effective tool for so-called educated citizens in the direction of a result desired by the government through a targeted program of measures which will threaten the fundamental values of liberalism, such as free decision, self-determination, and self-realization of the individual. This is about the second tension. The third tension is related to surveillance and privacy. AI technology is able to support surveillance through government agencies and helps to protect the people. However, privacy concerns may also arise during this process. In connection with AI-based government surveillance, As can be seen, the infringements of privacy caused by digital surveillance make the privacy protection become a very big challenge in the context of AI. AI-supported public authorities need to collect a wide array of data touching the citizens' private area to put AI to work. In addition, the system is highly sensitive to malicious attacks for accessing and this data. For example, smart cities are a vision of how digitally interconnected cities of the future should operate. China alone has more than 200 smart city projects in progress now. Predictably, the infrastructure of the city is billions of devices beneficial for the citizens by means of various applications such as smart transportation, smart government, smart healthcare, smart environments, and smart homes. The construction of smart cities will bring about a higher quality of life to the masses through digital interconnectivity, leading to increased efficiency and accessibility in different cities. However, it will be necessary to anticipate various security and privacy threats during the construction of smart city systems. As shown in this figure, we can see that the architecture can be divided into 4 layers in the system of a smart city, including the perception layer, network layer, support layer, and application layer. Privacy problems due to the vulnerabilities commonly existing in each layer of a smart system. The widespread use of AI in the public sector entails a tension between massive surveillance and people's privacy. This is about this tension. The next tension exists between security and transparency. AI is a complex technology. Information availability in the adoption of AI is often very limited by the fact that algorithms are often proprietary, including when it is used in the public sector. The workings of commercial not publicly divulged, since they are often developed and sold by private for-profit companies. So trade secrets exceptions limit information access rights. In many AI application domains in public administration, transparency is of great importance. It is also a public value, such as using AI to make decisions on tax assessment and student finance. The citizens' stakes are very high. It is crucial that those automated decision systems are transparent on their reasoning mechanisms and carefully explain their decisions to the citizens. The use of AI in the public sector should be transparent, at least to a certain extent, to gain citizens' confidence and trust in the AI application and to ensure that trust is deserved. The transparency of AI involves not only understanding the inner workings of an algorithm, but also informing the public about algorithms' existence and explaining how decisions or predictions are made by this algorithm. Given the secrecy and proprietary algorithms, it is highly unlikely that users or citizens would have the opportunity or would have the capability to assess, to evaluate these outputs of algorithms and the validity of the parameters on which a prediction was reached. So this caused the tension between secrecy and transparency. Last but not the least, the tension between complexity and justification should be noted in the use of AI in public administration. When adopting AI to make decisions and predictions in the field of public administration, given the algorithms inherent complexity is very complex. So it is not reasonable to expect any user to comprehend why the decision or prediction was made, especially for common people. In addition, the context of much algorithm use is that while developed by technical experts, these models are sold on the public sector bodies to be used by domain experts, which will make the traditional informational asymmetry problems become more serious because the information is asymmetry, especially for non-technical audiences, including both public administrators and citizens as users. This will cause a lot of challenges for justification of any decisions made by public sector bodies. Because justification is a critical dimension of accountability in public sector bodies, which refers to explaining the rationale leading to a particular decision outcome. In a political context, for example, parliamentary committees can hold hearings or with organizational actors under their purview to ask questions and seek explanations for observed failings. Similarly, public organizations make public statements or issue reports to justify specific actions or decisions to the broader public. However, the tension between complexity of AI technology and justification of decision outcomes arises. Because given the complexity of AI technology, it is highly unlikely that the public bodies and citizens as users would have the sufficient capacity to evaluate the outputs and the predictions. So far, we have already discussed the potential tensions of AI application in public administration, but how to deal with them. Next, I will talk a little bit about some possible responses. The first response is a pilot project. AI applications in public administration should take place gradually, not so fast. The smaller and ethically inoffensive pilot projects are necessary and crucial because they are more likely to be well manageable and readily comprehensible for different stakeholders involved, which can also promise faster success and increase social acceptance of AI technology. Secondly, I think ethical guidelines are very important because public organizations need to take ethical measures and make them explicit. Through the institutionalization of such ethical measures, excuse me, a set of ethical guidelines should be made to help monitor and regulate the ethics of AI. Additionally, establishing a ethic council or committee and developing a legal framework to handle ethical matters of AI in public sectors and to control the use of AI are also very important. These efforts can ensure that AI tools are used in a thoughtful and effective manner. Moreover, I think governments could initiate educational programs such as training courses or workshops for their employees to strengthen AI-specific skills and within their organizations, which also may smoothen the tension of adopting AI in the context of workforce transition. Last but not the least, more effective interaction strategies should be applied and developed. During the implementation of AI application, governments at different levels need to improve the way in which they interact with their citizens. It requires the public organizations to explore new ways of explanations and new principles to evaluate the quality of a given explanation rather than the traditional ones. It was also found by research that communication with the citizen can be improved by providing a more interactive way to explain the decisions made using AI. Because citizens could be offered more insights into the specific components of the decision made, the calculations applied, and the source of law that contains the rules underlying the decision-making process. All of this will help promote the interaction and the explanation of the decision. For example, based on the analysis of the AI application used to decide on student loans in Dutch, and the AI application was developed by the Education Executive Agency in Dutch. Scholars found that the agency provided the citizens with a very bright, interactive, and straightforward digital letter. And this letter includes necessary and contrastive information and offered the opportunity to interact. And this letter was also compatible with existing knowledge of the citizen. This interactive approach helped achieve a better understanding of the citizen in the use of AI in deciding on student loans. In a nutshell, the operation of a controllable AI in public administration is feasible, but requires a sophisticated nexus of various computer functions and monitoring mechanisms for AI algorithms. Adopting AI in public administration should consider both the external factors and influences of the system and its internal functions and efficiency. In this context, this is my presentation. I'm looking forward to your questions and comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chi. Very interesting presentation, a lot of insights. I'll just, we received a few questions. I'll just read them out in the order of them being sent to me. And also have a couple of comments from my end. So I'll start with the audience question. The first question is this: in your research or your work, have you noticed any impact of AI on public administration employees' work at federal level or local levels? Can you share with us some examples?
Thank you. This is a very good question. It's related to human resource management in the public sector. I think it did. Firstly, I think the adoption of AI in the workforce of public organizations will emphasize that even though we are using a technology, public value is also important. So we should emphasize public value again and again on when we use AI in the workforce of public sectors, because AI is a so-called like a rational tool. When we use a rational tool, sometimes the employees in public sectors will forget the public value. So, for public employees in governments at different levels, when they use of AI as a technology, the government will emphasize public value again, including equity, transparency, and responsiveness, compared with traditional ways of doing things. They will try to emphasize public value in workforce. This is the first influence. Secondly, I think there are more and more educational programs in the workforce of public organizations and different government levels, because as you know, public organizations have very limited number of professionals with sufficient skills and capacities to handle AI technologies. So more and more educational programs emerged in this context to help the public employees to gain the capability to use AI technologies and in their in their workforce. But on the other hand, there are also some complaints or some lawsuits, as I mentioned in my presentation, during the process of AI adoption, because sometimes citizens they're not they can understand the decision-making process and the predictions made by AI technology. So there will be more conflict between citizens and public employees in the government, in different levels of government. So this requires the public employees to develop the interactive approaches to promote the a more effective interactions between citizens and the case workers in different levels of governments. That's what I observed. Thank you for this question. Very good question.
This is really interesting. Actually, that insight that you shared with us actually goes very well with actually the third question I received. So I'll read that one first and then come back to the second question. So the first question is really about, the citizens, they don't necessarily have the power, but then government employees, public sector employees, they don't have the knowledge. A lot of times the knowledge are in, we talked about this in yesterday's panel, the knowledge is in the hands of companies, right? So this third question is about that. So you talked about privacy and transparency, which are two important tensions of AI in public administration. What can citizens do to protect us, or at least protect our data if we lack the power that government has and the knowledge that companies do?
This is a very good question. And honestly speaking, I never think about it from the citizens' perspective. How can we protect ourselves? Because we are less powerful compared with the government. But this is a very important perspective that we should think about the use of AI in public administration. From my understanding, firstly, I think we should educate ourselves first. We should update our knowledge and skills to try our best to know more about the AI application in different areas of public affairs. For example, especially some issues really relevant to our individual interests. For example, as I mentioned in my presentation, if you need student loans, or if you need welfare applications, and you know that the government is using AI technology to make decisions, you may need to educate yourself first to try your best to know the procedures of this process, and this can help you to gain some basic knowledge of this. This is about how to educate ourselves. There are a lot of resources on the market and in the society, in the community that you can use to do that. Secondly, I think interaction is very important. The interaction is like two-way interactions. It's not just the government or the case workers reach out to you. It is also important for ourselves to reach out to the case workers or to the agencies in the different levels of government proactively. So if you have any questions or concerns, you need to reach out actively and timely, right? This is also a best way, a very good way for you to have some background and knowledge about the next steps of the AI application in your case, and you can provide your suggestions and comments on that to promote the interaction process. So I think interaction process is very important. Last but not the least, I think we can also study some legal frameworks, some regulations and rules about the adoption of AI in a specific area. Because if something that we don't want happen, we can use the legal framework and use the regulations to protect ourselves. So as citizens, I think we should become familiar with the relevant regulations and legal framework about AI use in public affairs. This is the legal tool that we can use to protect our privacy. Thank you.
That's great answer and great advice, great set of advice. So coming back to the second question, is there anything you think public administration can do to foster the ethical development and use of AI?
Thank you for this question. This is a very great question for me as a public administration scholar. Yes, I think for public administration scholars, we are not exempt from playing an important role. I think issues of AI such as transparency, bias, fairness, and accountability are not purely technical. It's not only about technical issues. It's also about some questions that require serious engagement from our discipline and a broader public administration lens. For example, when we talk about accountability challenges raised by the use of AI tools within government, actually it is linked to broader question of bureaucratic legitimacy. So this is what public administration scholars can do. How we understand a bureaucratic legitimacy in the area of AI. And this is like provide a public administration lens to understand the practical issues in the use of AI. So, but for common people, they won't think about the legitimacy issues. But for public administration scholars, we need to think about this in-depth questions because the foundations of bureaucratic legitimacy includes bureaucratic expertise and accountability. And these two will be simultaneously diminished during the AI process use in government. So we need to think about some broader and in-depth questions as a public administration scholar to analyze the challenges caused by AI in the public administration practice and to provide advices from the public administration perspective. Thank you.
This is great. This is so interesting. I mean, personally, I find your answer as interesting as the question. I think public administration's bureaucratic legitimacy is a very interesting concept to study. And AI presents researchers in organization theory and public administration a great opportunity to look at how the advance of AI would diminish public administration's bureaucratic legitimacy and what can be done, right? What kind of legitimacy work can be done to enhance their legitimacy, and also potentially maybe there might be some AI-based solutions, right? So the AI is the cause of the diminishing of bureaucratic legitimacy, but then the solution might also be in how AI is implemented and how AI is being co-developed. You study, I mean, this is from myself, but you study extensively collaborative governance. I think this might be a good opportunity to look at, how different parties can, really work hand in hand to look at ways to enhance everyone's legitimacy in the mind's eye of the general public, and it'd be super interesting to look at the power sharing issues, right? So if we have to work on, that's very interesting. Thank you. The final question that I got here, hang on, there's the second, So the final question we have here is this. This is a more general question. In your view, is there an adequate vision from the regulators and government of the potential of AI for good of all? So is there a vision? Is there adequate vision from the government and regulators?
This is a very good question because it pointed out a very important angle to deal with the issues and challenges caused by AI in public administration. From the regulatory angle, I think, yes, regulatory efforts are very important in they are vitally needed to ensure that AI tools are brought to bear in a thoughtful and effective manner. What come up in my mind is that we can use different regulatory tools to control or manage the AI use, such as AI model certification, third-party independent testing of AI model performance, and also, as you mentioned, using the collaboration among different sectors to regulate the use and performance of AI in public administration. And we can also develop some assessments for the algorithms based on the standards developed by some experts to test or to evaluate the performance or and the use of AI in public administration. And we can also promote and absorb some public opinions in the use of AI in public sectors to better regulate this practice. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes, really good. I think that's also on that note, this is maybe something that for the audience to think about as well, right? What we can do to help the regulators and government to have enough or adequate vision to ensure that AI is a force for good. It's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Chi, for this insightful talk. And thank you everyone again for tuning in. Our next talk will be up in 18 minutes. Before that, let's have a break. Thank you, Dr. Chi. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in for yet another keynote session of IICCIE22 conference, International Interdisciplinary Conference on Creativity, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. It's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Jing Tang from Rochester Institute of Technology to talk about AI and opinion mining, multimodality in social science in the next 1 hour. Before we get started, one housekeeping item, because we're streaming on multiple platforms in order to help us coordinate the Q&A, please just send your questions for the Q&A period to the email address at the bottom of your screen. That is info@theiori.com, info@theiori.com. I repeat, info@theiori.com. Let me introduce Dr. Jing Tang, who is currently tenure track assistant professor at the Department of MIS, Marketing and Analytics at Rochester Institute of Technology. Dr. Tang earned her PhD in Design and Innovation from Weatherhead School of Management, Case Western Reserve University in the US. Her research interests primarily lie in digital platform and digital strategy, with a current focus on online review systems design of digital platforms and the key capabilities to keep a leading role in digitalization at individual and organizational levels. Her studies adopt an interdisciplinary approach that integrates theories from information systems, marketing, and strategy, and she employs multiple quantitative and qualitative methods in order to build a better understanding of digital mechanisms. Dr. Tang, thank you very much again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Zhao, and thank you everyone for coming to my talk. In this talk, I will mainly focus on the, so in this talk, I will mainly focus on AI and opinion mining, especially the adoption of AI in social science. And this talk will mainly have three parts. So I will start from the theory building in the big data area, and then show you some examples of textual modality and multimodality studies, talking about the advantages and challenges that we face when adopting the AI in social science. I'd like to start from the theory building, because in social science, we actually are more interested in storytelling. That science, we are more interested in examining the mechanism behind the social phenomena. And in this case, I will start from the IS studies, because IS research actually examines the people, technology, organizations, and the relationships among them. So this would be a good start for us to look at the adoption of AI in social science. And nowadays, there are three idealized approaches to IS research in the area of big data. So if we start from the approach one, this is actually the traditional approach that we adopt in IS studies. And we have in this approach, we have a goal to generalize, to get some generalizable community knowledge. So to reach that goal, we may start from either the phenomena that we are interested in or the prior literature, because we want to do some contribution to the academic. So with the iteration of this loop between the phenomena of interest and the prior literature, we may get to our research questions. So in this case, the research question, one example could be, would the perception of technologies affect the influence of technology use on team performance? So with that research question, we can find some empirical evidence to support our theoretical framework. So usually in the evidence procedure, we may start from preparing our model and the key constructs and the relationships, build and develop our hypothesis. And then the next step is to identify the key constructs and their measurements. And with that, we can collect the data, which we can use to measure those constructs and analyze the data. So the key here is that after we analyze the data, we won't go back to the very beginning of the evidence procedure, since that we won't redevelop our theoretical framework. And we can actually test the hypothesis with, for example, case studies, right? We have some targeted cases, or with survey studies, or maybe experiments. So for those, we can get some first-hand of data. Maybe we can use some second-hand data, like some archive data, for example, 10K fillings in accounting field. But usually, the evidence would come from the small or medium sample. And then we can do the analysis, come to the conclusion, and hopefully contribute to the prior literature, make some theoretical contribution to the academic. But thanks for big data, we now have the big data actually kind of change the games. So it introduced the second approach to this field. And the goal now could be just to generate some actionable pragmatic knowledge instead of the cumulative knowledge. So in this case, we are more interested in a specific context, which we have, where we have big data and the phenomena of interest. We look at the interaction between them. And then we have a research objectives. So it's more like a problem solving oriented instead of theory building oriented. And we want to solve some specific problems, and that problems is very context based. So when we do the empirical studies, we may want to start from identify the big data subsets, because it's mainly context-based, right? So we want to solve the problem for a specific context. And based on the understanding of the data and phenomena, we will get the data set and prepare the subset as a data subset. And then the next step is to identify the measures. So if we're comparing the big data oriented empirical studies and the theory building oriented empirical studies, we can find that in the second step, the second steps and third steps actually different in these two approach, right? And then we analyze the data. So the thing here is that for every steps in the evidence procedure, we can go back to the previous steps if needed. And after we analyze the data, we can go back to the very beginning to re-identify the big data subsets if needed. And then we can do the iteration of this loop until we get a good model regarding to the model evaluation statistics. And then we can use that model to solve the problem. So the contribution in this approach is mainly in practice. So we solve some problems in practice. And if we combine these two, it can lead us to the approach 3, which is theory-informed big data research. So in this type of approach, we still want to make some contribution to the previous literature. So we want to generate some generalizable community knowledge. So we can look at the interaction between the phenomena of interest, the big data, and the private literature. And here we will generate our research questions. So the example of the research questions in this case could be what technology use patterns are most impactful on team performance? Well, if it's just as a big data oriented analysis, then the research objects could be successfully predict the team performance. We are not interested in the mechanism behind the team performance. We just want to successfully predict that very accurately, okay? So if we go back to the approach 3 here, now with the research questions, we want to answer that research question. We may get some data from the specific context, right? So still prepares a model of constructs and relationships, but it's theory-based. We have some hypotheses to test, or we have some propositions we may want to address, and then prepare the data subsets from the specific context, identify the measures, and analyze the data. So here, if needed, we can go back from identifying measures or analyzing data to the very beginning steps of evidence procedure. And then if we get our results, we can come to the conclusion. And now the knowledge that we generate should be able to contribute to both the private literature and the practice. So we will have some contribution to academic as well as the practices. And that would be the approach we want to adopt in the future. And if we look at the approach 3, we actually integrate prior literature, phenomena of interest, and the big data analytics while we're building the theory. So one important aspect of big data analytics is that it's highly possible that we may want to deal with some unstructured data instead of just the numbers, right? So the data could be textual data, visual data, audio data, or just pictures, figures, right? So if we compare let's focus on the textual data right now. So if we compare the traditional approach of text analysis to the computational approach of textual analysis, we can find that in the traditional way, we mainly rely on the human coders. So when we do the coding, it's manual coding. For example, the grounding theory methodology, right? So we start from some targeted cases and then do the open coding for concepts, access coding for associations, and finally selective coding for building the theory. Well, if we look at the automatic computational, let's say theory discovery, then we start from the sampling and data extraction, and then we will use the computing method to generate the taxonomy, and then identify the relationships, generate the models. So think about the some example like applying the machine learning to do the classification, like the topic modeling, right? So we can see the difference between the grounding theory and the topic modeling. And the good thing for topic modeling is that it can deal with the big data, but the disadvantage of topic modeling is that the output may be hard to interpret. So if we can combine the manual and computational textual analysis, that would be a good way to help us building the theory. So for example, the scholars, they can rely on the human coders to code for the concepts and then develop a dictionary for the machine to do the coding work, right? So we can do this iteratively, iteration, right? Iteratively constructing a data set through the cycle of data collection, and also iteratively do the categorizing work according to some established concepts and looking for the relationships or the associations. And so here I want to show you an example of textual modality studies using approach 3. And this is one good example of integrating an interesting phenomenon, big data analytics. And we aim at contributing to private literature. So we want to generate some cumulative knowledge and fill some theory gap here. So I would like to introduce the concepts as a platform a little bit before we look at the phenomena here. So this is a user-generated content platform and have two groups of users, main groups of users. So the first group is the authors. Authors are the producers on this platform. They provide some free content, which is the books. So interesting here is that the books is actually posted by chapter online. So the authors will post the books by a chapter every day or every several days. And then the readers on this platform, who are the consumers, they would be able to read the books for free and provide some reviews of user contributions if they like. So the user contributions here is just like the tips that we give to the waiters to appreciate their service. So if the readers really like the book, they can pay some user contributions with real money. And this actually are part of the income of the authors on this platform. And they have this review rating scale, have 5 levels. So if it's 1 or 2, it's negative review. If it's 4 or 5, it's positive review. If it's 3, it's neutral. Another interesting thing on this platform is that actually the readers will involve in this creation process. That says, actually, I did the interviews for those authors, and they told me that usually they will have an outline of the story, but they may change that if they get too many negative feedbacks from the readers. So that means the readers' review do matters a lot for the authors, especially also as well as the book's quality. And an author can also be a reader. And after I did the matching in my data set, I found that around 50% of the readers are actually also the authors on this platform. So that means some authors may intentionally post negative reviews to other authors because they are the competitors for them, right? So the thing is that some authors, they reported to the platform managers saying that they got some unfair negative reviews. Some of that are fake reviews. Some of them are like unreasonable rude with some malicious content. So the authors hope that the platform can solve this problem for them. If we only have a few authors encounter these issues, then the platform can just remove the negative reviews or the fake reviews for them. But if we have large amount of authors have this problem, then it will be a huge increase in the management cost for the platform. So what would the platform do? The platform, they launch this regulation, the tax on negative regulation, meaning that the readers need to pay 1 virtual currency for publishing each negative reviews. And also they need to keep login status on this website. And it's actually not hard to get the virtual currency. If you log in, you will get 1 virtual currency every day. And if you log in, let's say, continuously log in for 1 week, you may get 50 virtual currency. So it's not really hard. This is just a very little cost for the readers to post a negative review. So if you really don't like that book, you may want to pay this cost. But if you just post negative reviews for no reasons, then you may not want to post this cost. So if we look at the average count of the positive versus negative reviews that we get every day after the regulation, we can see the negative reviews actually significantly decreased after the regulation, right? So that means this regulation, in which the readers just need to pay very little cost for posting a negative reviews, really did a good job, right? To exclude those maybe malicious negative reviews and creating a healthy environment on this review system. So we now have an interesting phenomenon, right? And we have the big data. We actually collected around 2 million of the reviews of 5,000 ebooks from this website, and 10 months before and after the regulation day. And now we want to connect to the private literature. So if we look at the role of, so we're interested in the role of negative reviews and want to see whether this regulation on posting negative reviews would affect the role of negative reviews on business performance. And if we look at the literature here, actually, most of the literature shows that negative reviews has negative effects on business performance. And it's not surprising, right? It happens in the industry like the film, online shopping, or hotel. Well, at the same time, we also find a small group of literature shows that the negative reviews may have positive effects on sales. But they did that with a lab experiment, and they show that the negative information could increase the purchase likelihood and sales by increasing the productive awareness. Like, we don't know this product before, but because it's stand out because of its negative reviews, we may want to have a try, right? So it may have some positive effects. So the next question that we want to ask is, one, do the negative reviews have negative effects, and when do them have positive effects? Will this regulation make a difference on the effects of negative reviews on the business performance, right? And this regulation on the platform provide us a perfect setting to do this neutral experiment. And we also find other theories that support the role of negative reviews, and mention it's the negative reviews actually matters more than the positive reviews. As the positive reviews that have some tiny negative details will make it has a like even stronger positive effects on the business outcomes. So with those literature, we build our theoretical model. So we believe that the text on negative regulation will affect the relationship between review propensity, maybe negative reviews or positive reviews on the business performance. And we believe this difference actually comes from the regulation on the review content. So we use two measures to measure the reviews contents, the cues of review contents. We look at the negativity and the toxicity of the reviews. So the negativity actually here stands for how likely a comment is to express unpleasant emotions. So it's reasonable that the negative reviews is more negative, right? Because people express the critical comments here. If they don't like the book, why they don't like the book, right? But we hope that negative reviews is really about the book, and it's reasonable negative reviews. And so we want to exclude those toxicity content. We hope the comment is not unreasonable rude, and it will not deprive the authors. So after the regulation, we apply the machine learning models to get the measures for the negativity and the toxicity, because we have millions of the reviews. It's really unbelievable to do that with human coders, right? So we apply AI to get that. And then here is the results. After the regulation, actually we could find that the negative reviews becomes more negative, positive reviews become more positive. It kind of cleans the reviews, right? And also we found that for both negative reviews and positive reviews, after the regulation, the toxicity actually decrease. So that means this regulation, like say text on negative reviews regulation, do have to reduce the toxicity content of the negative reviews, while at the same time it has some spillover effect on the positive reviews. So it actually have to build a better environment of the whole review system. Okay. So just to summarize, this study shows that while we apply or adopt AI in social science, actually we also interested in theory building. We hope that our study could contribute to the previous literature. And also the technology is not the whole story here. We also look at the design thinking. This study actually is an intersection between design thinking, AI and big data analytics, and theory building. So the design thinking here is the creative human actions, right? So the platform designers, they find a way, a creative way to make the review systems easier for the manager teams to handle, and also make it healthier for both the authors and the readers. And so now let's look at more about the affected emotion analysis, a multimodality analysis. So in a typical example here, actually for the multimodality studies, we won't only look at one channel, not just the text. We may also look at the speech data, for example, the audio, right? And also the video data to get some estimation of the emotion here. So for the video, for example, the body gestures, the facial expression, or the hand movement, we use also a lot of them as the cues and to estimate the emotion. So the advantages here is very obvious. With multiple channels, we can provide surplus of behavioral cues here instead of just looking at the transcripts, right? And also it can increase the accuracy and reliability of the estimation of emotions. And here I listed some technologies that we adopted in video, audio, and text data analysis to get to do the emotion or affective recognition. So basically we can find that for videos, we still mainly focus on the facial expression, facial action, like the head movement. We use some body gestures, but for the machine learning model, mainly focus on the hand gesture. And if we look at the textual data, still it's based on the bags of words or bags of concepts. And we now have some new deep learning, machine learning models to make it better. And if we look at the comparison of these three different modalities, basically we could conclude that the current status shows that most of the studies report that the visual modality is superior to audio or other modalities. The audio modality actually suffers more from noise. But we also have some researchers point out that the textual modality is the most vital one in multimodality. And this is just from the technology aspects. But interestingly, I found that in social science, most of the researchers also just adopted the video and text data in their analysis. So let's see some examples here. Before the examples, let's look at the video here a little bit. So the video data is really popular here, right? So if we want to look at the emotion from the face, we have some examples like the facial action coding system. We could look at the eyes, the eyebrows, the lips to do the coding, find the clues of the emotions and do the coding. And for social science scholars, we can just apply some API to get the emotion measures. So for example, if we import our video in this face reader API, then we can get the measures of the emotions in these 7 dimensions, but one is neutral. So if we look at that, we have sad, surprised, disgusted, happy, angry, scared, right? So we have these 6 different dimensions of emotion. And this API can show you not only the emotion at a specific time point, but also the sequence of the change of the emotion, right? For example, at 9 seconds, the third 9 seconds, it's angry. And here it's maybe sad. And now it's surprise, right? So we can use those measures in our studies to contribute to the theory building process. And here is some examples that I found in marketing research. And in this study, the researchers want to look at whether the frontline employees' performance would affect the customer satisfaction or not. So the research setting is airline field. They use both the verbal cues and non-verbal cues. So they use both the transcript and the videos. And to answer the question, they just look at the employees' problem-solving capabilities, and they get the interaction, the data, video data of the interactions between the frontline employees and the customers. So they have around 100 usable videos. Each video lasts at least 3 minutes, but they want to look at the dynamic of the interactions between the employees and the customers. So they split each video into a small size, like 20 to 60 minutes, 20 to 6 seconds, and then do the coding. So they use some non-verbal cues of the frontline employees to code for this construct, the frontline employee displayed effect. And they look at whether they have show positive, neutral, or negative effect. And the information that they use from the videos are actually not only for the facial information, but also the bodily. And once they look at the body, they don't just look at the things that we just introduced in the machine learning model. They also look at the distance and posture of the whole body. And then they also look at the gesture, right? But not just the handy. So in this case, they can get a measure for the frontline employees' displayed effect. But the key thing here is that for these studies, researchers mainly rely on human coders. So the whole process is kind of similar like the traditional manual coding way, right? We have two different coders, and then we do the coding independently, and do the consistency check and refine the dictionary and get that. But if they have this final dictionary, maybe they can try to adopt the machine learning model for the large data set. But this is some start point in marketing analysis to adopt the multimodality analysis to examine the relationship between the employees' problem-solving capabilities and customers' satisfaction. And here is another example in organization studies. In this study, the researchers are more interested in who is the responsible corporations. So they got some CSR videos of the companies. The videos mainly comes from the, most of the videos actually the public videos that posted on the firm's website or YouTube. So they got that videos and do the analysis to answer the question. Well, the thing here is if we look at the description here, the authors actually they call the actor's action, the actor's relationship, the actor's interaction. So that data and that construct is really hard to generate from existing API that we have, right? But again, they use a small sample size. They only have 54 videos and each around 3 minutes. So they mainly rely on human coders. And they code that in regarding of power and constitutive nature of the CSR communication. And those two constructs actually are not included in the existing API. So for the social science studies, I think the difficulties for us is that we may want to generate the dictionaries for the machines. Okay, so so now we can just briefly talk about the challenges of adopting the AI in multimodality analysis in social science. The challenges in the theory part, I would say the validity of the measurement would be a problem. And also for the AI models, they are not interested in explaining the causal relationship and all the mechanism behind that. But that's the thing that social science scholars are interested in. And also the interpretation may be a problem. As we said, we can use the machine learning model to do the topic modeling. But the thing is that after we do the topic modeling, how do we interpret the different topics that we have, right? That may be a problem. And the empirical challenge is that for the AI, we see the limitation of the constructs, right? Not all the constructs that we need can be found with the existing API or the machine learning models. And also, if we want the machine give us accurate result, we may need to provide high quality videos or audios, but it's not always the case in social science. Okay, and thanks for all this great work. And any questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you very much for such informative talk, a lot of insights. I personally find your talk very relatable. In my own research, I look at ways to integrate humanity-based approaches such as semiotics with computational approaches such as natural language processing and pattern recognition in study organizations and groups. So it's really, really interesting, very insightful. I learned a lot. I've received a few questions from the audience, just to read them out in the order of receiving them. So the first question is, How do we address the challenges of adopting AI in studying multimodality in social sciences? Any examples that you can share?
Yeah, actually, we do have a lot of challenges while we're adopting AI in social science. So one challenge, if we look at those videos, right? When we, for example, this one, if we have human coders, even though we cannot see the whole face of the employees, we can still do the coding on their emotion based on the social distance between the employees and the customers, and also the gestures, the whole body's position, something like that. But that's not the case for machine. So that would be one of the limitations here. And also if, so in this case, if we look at this graph, so if people show the front face, it would be easy for the machine to identify the emotion of the humans. But if they show the side face, then that would be a problem for AI, right? So I think we really need to face those limitations and challenges while adopting AI. And another thing here is that if we think about the grounded theory, while we do the coding, we have access coding for the association, right? So, and also while we do the survey studies, we may generate the second order constructs, but it's really a problem for AI to generate the higher order constructs nowadays. So if we want to build a second order constructs, theoretically it makes sense, but we may not be able to empirically test it with AI. But if we can combine the AI with some traditional social methodologies, then we may be able to solve that problem. For example, we can create a dictionary and use AI to do the coding, generate the first order constructs. And then we use other methods to test the second order construct if it makes sense or not. So I think to find a way to better combine the traditional method and the AI method would help us to do a better job in theory building.
That's really nice. Thanks. Very, very good insight as an answer. I also think it relates to what we talked about yesterday in one of the sessions. AI maybe can be a colleague, right? That shouldn't replace human researchers in doing our work. And I personally also think I'm actually quite pessimistic about the prospect of using AI in generating any kind of qualitative research insights, as you correctly pointed out, right? With people putting on masks. Now, this kind of meaning-making capacity, we still have them. We still have those kind of capacity as human beings, but at the current technology allows, or doesn't. The current technology doesn't really allow us to really rely on the machine to come up with any, I think, sensible insights. I don't think machine right now can really make sense of anything. I think meaning generation still there's a long way to go. The second question, yeah, go ahead if you had some. Yeah.
No, I just totally agree with.
Yeah, thank you. The second question is a little bit provocative. So the question is this: there are lots of marketing research about design thinking, but very little research using design thinking as an approach. So do you think this approach is more useful in practice than in research then?
I won't say it's more useful in practice than in research, because I think as a researcher, we also hope that our research could contribute to the practice or even lead the practice. But we do find that the practitioner people talk more about the design thinking than the researchers. And I think maybe that's because that's useful, and the effects, we can see the effects in a very short time. Like the example I show you for that platform with this little creative design, smart design on the review system, we don't need to spend too much time to detect the fake reviews. We know actually detect the fake reviews is not easy, right? And also detect those malicious reviews spend a lot of time, energies, and other economic costs. So yeah, the practitioner people do talk more about design thinking, but I think it's also very useful for the researchers to think about that. And actually, the design thinking is a set of human-centered principles and creative problem-solving methods. So we may also think about that, especially in the big data area. So I think it's getting more and more important.
That's really nice. I think it's really encouraging to hear what you said. I personally also think there's a lot we can do about design thinking being used as an approach, not just as a subject of our study, right? There are just so many people study design thinking. They talk about how design thinking has been mobilized in practice, but then as an approach to research, I think there's a lot more that we can do. So what you said just now is really encouraging. Third question. Can you elaborate on why negative reviews have more influence than positive reviews on business performance? Good news also boosts company stock price, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, most of the cases, we would say positive reviews will have positive effects on the business performance. And why I say negative reviews have more influence than positive reviews on business performance, I mean, if they have the same size, let's say same length of positive reviews or same length of negative reviews. So the reason is that because negative reviews have less in frequency. This is one thing. And secondly, usually the negative reviews are believed as more informative. So if, let's say, if we have a product which have around 70% of negative reviews, but 30% of positive reviews. In this case, the positive reviews is less in frequency. So if less in frequency, so that in that case, maybe positive reviews will have a stronger effect of on the business performance than the negative reviews. So the reason I say that because it's just more informative and usually in most of the cases less infrequent.
That's excellent answers. Thank you. A final question here is related to computational social science. So the question goes, do you recommend that marketing students study more computational social science? What is your estimation on the prospect of using computational approaches in social sciences in general?
Actually, I would say this is a trend nowadays. This is a trend that almost all the business students will learn some basic knowledge of computational studies, or learn some business analytics, basic business analytics concepts like the big data analytics, what is AI, what is machine learning, something like that. I think it's useful for marketing students because we do have some actually marketing analytics course, right, open in business schools. But still it's based on your own interest. But for me, I think it's a good direction that you may want to think about. And machine learning actually, it's just one method. As I said, it's just one method. The whole idea for no matter you are IS students or marketing students or financial students, so the key idea is to solve the problem with those methods. So think about the approach 2 and approach 3, right? So for scholars in approach 3, we use the big data analytics and AI just to tap to do the theory building or theory development. But if you are the practitioners, then you may want to focus on approach 2, and you can use the big data analytics and AI to do the better classification or prediction, which is also very helpful in marketing field. So yeah, I would say I think it's a good way to pursue.
That's fantastic. I think it's a very useful word of advice to a lot of students that are viewing right now. So it's time, if you are not computation, if you are not aversive to computation, sciences, then maybe it's a good time. I think it's really a good time right now in social science to embrace that, because we have a lot more resources than before. I think students who are interested in learning, they can get more support.
Yeah,
okay.
We actually have more collaboration with other departments, like the CS department.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And most of the universities are encouraging that.
Yes, I think we're really at a good time for social scientists to really upscale us. Okay, that concludes the session. Thank you so much again, Dr. Tang, for the very informative talk, and thank you everyone for tuning in. For this session, also for the earlier sessions, we will pause the streaming for now, but our conversation certainly shouldn't stop here. We welcome any further emails from you. Thank you very much again, Dr. Tang, for your time, and thank you everyone. See you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Zhao.